Um, we have a customer development need where we need to discover new customers and then learn what their problems are, and from there move forward into building a solution for them, which is somewhat different than a business development need where we know what our product is and we know what our customer base is, and we have at least some notion of the sub-market that's going to be responsive. And so in that context, please keep in mind the difference between customer discovery conversations and customer development conversations as compared to this business development lead generation kinds of activities. And so in that context, Alex has spent a good amount of time working on this question of how people engage through email and messaging of one kind or another. So Alex, can you introduce yourself in a little bit more detail and then go into your talk, please?
Absolutely. I'll just go ahead and start by just sharing my screen. So yeah, again, my name is, I don't know if you guys can see it. You guys see my screen?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. First of all, that's not me. But my name is is Alex Brooks, and I own a company called ENTREPROV. And what we do is what I like to call is personal touch engagement. That's a fancy way. Don't get too caught up in that. All that means is we really help companies use email marketing and different channels of marketing to really leverage crafting the right message or the perfect message to the right person, and then at the right timing to really build and deepen those relationships using email marketing or text marketing or web pushes. So I founded this company back in 2017. Yeah, right now we're operating in several different industries, all the way from co-working spaces to retail to solar panel companies. So we're dabbling in a lot of industries, but I want to tell you guys a little bit more about me so you can hear about my backstory and how I got my humble beginnings. So I'm born in Detroit. I don't know if any of you guys are from Michigan or have ever been. So it's pretty cold there. And it gets pretty hot there. But I grew up in Detroit, and I've always been really passionate about, starting and building my own business. I was really fascinated with it. So it hasn't been a fad for me or something that just came along. I have this running joke that I always tell people, but there's a lot of truth in the joke, is I technically started my first business at 10. My uncle told me that I should be cutting the front line and cutting the back line. So he, gave me the lawnmower. And I thought it would be a great idea to go to some of my neighbors' house and knock on their door and see if they want their grass cut. So, cutting my grass turned into cutting neighbors' grass down the street. And I thought it'd be a great idea to turn that into raking leaves in the fall and then shoveling snow in the winter, because Michigan, we get a lot of snow. So I took that idea and I built it into my own business, where I just had clientele all throughout my neighborhood at a very young age. And that passion for, running my own thing has just never left. So I've always found ways to really gravitate towards that. Now, years ago, about 7 years ago, I moved out here from Michigan, and I moved to Seattle because I wanted to see what all the startup fuss was about. I really wanted to get around companies that, I wanted to really get around companies that knew how to do things right. And I also wanted to see companies do things wrong. I wanted to see the failures. I wanted to see the full picture. So with that being said, I worked for several companies, and I decided to be brave enough and just jump out again and just start my own thing, which is ENTREPROV. So this is our small, our team is bigger than this, but this is our team that focuses specifically on marketing. The email marketing, the design of emails and the templates and all the details around that. But today, I really want to focus on helping you guys. And my goal by the end of this talk is I want you guys to be able to craft powerful emails that drive people to getting results, or drive people to results. And results meaning, clicking to download a PDF if that's what you're sharing, replying to your email, scheduling an appointment for a business meeting, or purchasing a product. I want results, meaning them doing things. So normally if we was in a classroom setting, I would ask you guys to raise your hands. So I won't do that now, right? Because it's a little different. But email is still one of the most powerful marketing channels around. And I'm talking beyond Instagram. I'm talking beyond Facebook. I'm not discrediting those. I think those are important to have along your process. But one thing, if any of you guys are renters or homeowners, you'll understand this. Social media is like you're renting space. You don't own it. You can't define the rules. If something happens and you lose hundreds of followers, those followers are gone until you figure out some way to figure out how to get them back. So that's the thing with social media. It's very powerful. I think you should always use it, but you don't own those lists. With email, one of the big differences is once people are into your world, you own it. And you get to control how often you want to email people and build those relationships under certain regulations. You don't ever want to be a person that spams people. So why do most small businesses, why most small businesses don't really take the time to really utilize email as much as they really should? Part of that, there's a lot of reasons to that, but I'll just touch on one. And one of the reasons is they really don't take email marketing seriously because they just don't understand how, or they don't understand how to build a framework around drafting successful email campaigns. There's so much information out there, and a lot of us suffer from information overload. So we struggle with coming up with a framework, a structure. So what I wanted to talk about today is a 6-step framework that our team uses to be able to help get results, get people opening emails, get people engaged, and get people, whether it's buying things, getting people to take action. So whenever, before we even get started, whenever our team is working with a new client, we always go through this 6-step framework. And here's the first step to it. And it may seem cliche, but the first thing is really figuring out the purpose of the email. Before we even write any content, our team sits down and we think about, the reason behind an email. What's our intended purpose? And I know some of you guys are in retail. Right now we have a group of people that we're all over the place in terms of like the industries that we have on this call. So I'm going to try to appeal to a couple different examples to help the idea hit home. But for us right now, for example, one of our retail clients, they're always looking for new ways to drive sales. So for them, the purpose of their email campaigns right now might be focused on, maybe driving more sales in their spring collection. So our purpose is to help them focus on how do they get rid of more of the spring clothes that they have. And that really dictates the whole process of what we're going to put in that email, what content is going to make sense in that email, and how it's going to be sent out. So determining the purpose of an email really helps us stay on track when writing email content. The overall purpose of the email is more so like a roadmap. We want to target audiences to help to get them to purchase items from this spring collection, and any additional content that that is not relevant to that email should really be left out. So that leads me to the next part, is knowing your target audience. You guys need to know everything you can about your target audience. I mean, you want to know what words they actually use when they're making the decision to purchase. Your product should really, whether your product, you want to know what words they're actually going to use when making I'm getting tripped up on my words, a purchasing decision, whether they purchase your product or not. You want to know the best time to be able to reach them. And why? Because you really want to be able to craft the perfect message that connects with them in a timely fashion. So for example, when working with, again, I'll go back to a retail example, working with my retail clients, we've found that Tuesdays and Thursday evenings are the best times to be able to send an email to their customers. So given that majority of the clients may have executive jobs or they may pay well, they prefer to do their shopping online after their day is done, after they're done with all their work. So what we've been able to do, just by taking the time to really understand their patterns and their behaviors, we've identified the best time to be able to engage with them. We've identified the best type of items or the products that they're really interested in. And we want to make sure that we relay that in the messaging. So the question is that I have for you guys is, and this is more so rhetorical, is how do you really learn about your customer? There's a lot of different strategies that you can use to be able to learn about your customer. And these are things that you are common sense, you already know about them. Surveys, collecting data from purchase patterns. If any of you guys are, I'm going to use some examples outside of retail. If you guys have more of a SaaS solution, or if you have a software that people are buying on a monthly subscription, what are some of the actual things that people say, or some of the thought process that people have when they decide to purchase your item? You want to get down to the fine details of really understanding that information. And part of the way that you can pull that off is just sitting down and talking with your customers. If any of you guys, moving forward in the future, if you face any of your customer, if you sit down with your customers face to face, or if you get on the phone with them and you're a part of the actual transaction, I would challenge you to ask them, what were some of the big reasons why you decided to choose us? And I would challenge you guys to write that stuff down, because over time, what you'll notice is you'll see a commonality. There's certain thoughts that your customers have when they actually decide to be able to buy your item or sign up for your service. I'll give you an example. We just brought on a company that does a lot of special wedding design dresses. And one of the things that she said that really resonated to me, and I asked her, what made you want to start working with us? Well, some of the pain points that she was struggling with was, I love what I'm doing. I love the work that we do. If there was a way for me to be able to, well, let me back up. I love what I'm doing, but I struggle with following up with people through email. Like, I just can never find the time to be able to follow up with my customers, through email. And I'm always trying to follow up with them through text. And I just need a way to be able to save time, or I need a way to be able to move faster. I'm just giving you guys examples of some of the thought process some of my customers may have throughout their, buying decision process. And I know I'm kind of going on and on about this, but it's so important for you to really take time to, in the research and learning process, to start learning some of the words that your customers actually use when they say, you know what, I think I'm actually going to go ahead and sign up for this, or you know what, I think I'm going to go ahead and buy this product because I really need it right now because I don't have the time, or maybe it's summertime and I need to get a new dress. All these are things that you should be thinking about as a business owner in terms of like when you're developing your email marketing campaign. So this leads me to the next thing is emotional response goal. So emotional response goal, you want to think about how you want your audience to emotionally respond by the end of them reading that email that you just sent. And when you think in terms of emotion, it could be a sense of urgency. Maybe you feel like, maybe you want your reader to feel like if they don't sign up for this today, it's going to expire and they're not going to get another opportunity. Or maybe you want them to feel inspired that instead of doing something in one way, you probably want them to feel inspired that they should schedule a call with you within the next week, so they can maybe sit down and learn about how they can take their business to the next level. I'm speaking in general terms because I know we have a lot of businesses on here. So does that make sense, everybody? All right, I see some heads shaking.
I think it's worth your while to explain a little more detail around emotional response, because we had a question about that in the chat, trying to understand emotional response. And specifically, it'd be useful for you to talk about the difference between different psychographic responses. So just because you wrote a message with one intent doesn't mean that all of the psychographic groups all respond the same way.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. So, and let me make sure I want to answer that in the way that makes the most sense. So what's the question that you're asking?
Well, you were giving sort of straightforward emotional responses of, create urgency or create a specific feeling. But because you're mailing to a diverse group of people, they might process the email in different ways. And so understanding the psychographics of your audience in some level and understanding how the different pathways that people might take to get to an emotional response that causes them to be motivated to take a step or take an action or to engage, and how that might be different. It's not just, buy now, here's a discount code. That might seem like an emotional response goal, but it is pretty simplistic and misses the value of good emotional writing.
No, I like that. So we're going to go ahead and take a step back, and I think that's great. And I want to dig deeper, and I want to give multiple examples of that. So, and this is why it's so important to really spend time understanding, connecting with your customers, whether it's through survey or if you can get on the phone with them, or if you sit down with your customers face to face, you really need to learn some of the thought processes that they have at different stages. So, for example, let's say, and I'm just going to give an example of somebody signing up for your newsletter. If a customer just signed up for your newsletter, now they're excited to learn more about you. One of the first emails you may send out may have an emotional response goal to have them feel like this is going to be a community that's going to just help their business just by reading more of the emails. Or emotional response goal may be initially to let them know that you're human and feel that they're going to be able to have some kind of genuine connection. So that first email that goes out after somebody signs up for your newsletter could simply be telling them like, hey, my name's Alex Brooks. Here's a little bit about my story, just in case you didn't know. And here's how we got started. So this emotional response goal you have for that initial email could be to kindle and deepen that relationship where it makes them feel more connected to your story and what you're doing. And I think all these, the layer of the emotional response goal really is dictated, and that's why I went backwards. It's really dictated by knowing your target audience, knowing where they're at in their buyer's journey, understanding the thought process they have at different stages. Because you could simply have a customer that they just want to get more information, and maybe they just want to learn about your business and how it can help, but they're not ready to make a purchase. Maybe they just want to get some free information. You need to be thinking about all these things in detail. And the only way you get to the point where you really understand this is constantly finding ways to interact with your customers throughout the process, from the moment they start their relationship to the moment they maybe decide to buy, or the moment that they've already bought from you and they're excited. And I'll give another example of an emotional response goal. Maybe you have a customer that has bought from you and they love your product. And now you may want to send an email out where the emotional response goal is you want them to feel excited to share some of the advice that you've given them to some of their friends or some of their colleagues. So there's a lot of emotional responses you could have initially, with the emails that you do. So does that make sense, and does that answer your question?
I think that gets to the point I was trying to make. I'd like to sort of give an example of a fail on the emotional goal. Right?
Oh yeah.
So I end up searching for something on Amazon, like a projector for this video series that I'm working on. And then I buy it on Amazon. And then the next 3 months, I get emails from Amazon showing me all the alternatives to the one I bought, even though they knew that I bought it. And they didn't learn anything about me in the process. They're just blathering at me things that are completely useless, right? So now here I am all wound up about this question of why should I shop at Amazon when they're just going to bombard me with spam, right? So that's the sort of fail of not paying attention to the context that they have and moving forward. They could have been doing the "do you like it, please tell your friends" thing, but they're not. They're doing the buy. You looked at this, so you should buy more of this, even though I'm going to buy one projector every decade.
Yep. And I love that. And there's so many points in that example that you made. And that's, we don't talk much about this in this talk, but I think it's so important to be able to map out your ideal customer journeys, how you've seen or how you think you'll see customers will start their relationship with your business and what stages they'll go throughout their interaction with your company over time. And I think that's a perfect example because once, John, did that search online and he made that purchase, now he's at a different stage in that journey where they shouldn't be saying buy right now. It should be more so, hey, thank you. I really want to show you that we appreciate, you being a customer of ours. If there's any questions, that you need that or want to ask that we can answer, please, shoot them out. So that's another example of an emotional response goal. What they should have did is they should have showed some gratitude and made him feel appreciated. But yeah, so there's so many different emotional response goals, but it all stems from, taking the time, obviously knowing your purpose of the email, and then, knowing your target audience and knowing where they're at throughout their life cycle. All these things lead up to the emotional response goal. So this one right here is actually particularly pretty funny. And I don't know if you guys can see this. I might be able to zoom in, but I thought I could. Looks like I can't. I found this email online, and basically this kind of leads back to the emotional response goal, but it's more of aligning your message with your subject line. And I've seen I've gotten emails from a lot of companies that will put the RE in the subject line to make it feel like I've already reached out to them and they're responding, or they may say something in the subject line that gets my attention, and then I open it up and it's not what it's supposed to be. If you're thinking about doing, a subject line and having something completely different in your email, I'm totally against it. I wouldn't do it. And here's part of the reason why. Spam. I'm just throwing this out there, but for every 1,000 emails you send out, if you get one spam complaint, it really has an impact on the email deliverability. And over time, what happens is the more you get spam complaints, the more your emails will generally start to go to the spam folder. And you don't want that. But the moral of the story here is, any email that you plan on sending out or campaign that you put together, just make sure that your subject line is consistent with the body. This one right here is kind of funny because it says the guy, I think I left my coat. And once you open the email, it's totally not, what you're expecting. So by all means, always try to make sure that your subject line is just consistent with what you plan to talk about in the body.
So we have a question on the list of what's a percentage of unsubscribes on your list? That's a good percentage.
That's a good question. There's a lot of factors there, and I'm going to try to break that down into fragments. So if you have been sending emails to people consistently, and it's a newsletter list that they're familiar with you, and you're constantly sending emails out, and you just see a spike in the unsubscribes compared to what it's normally then that's something that I would be concerned about. I wouldn't put a hard number of unsubscribes out there because it really depends. Because if you send a cold list, an email, you may get, 3, 4, 5% of unsubscribes. I would say the thing you want to be more concerned about is how you build your list at the initial beginning. And if it's a list that you already have and you see an increase or a spike in the amount of unsubscribes, then that's when you really want to dig into and just look at what you sent to them. Was it relevant? Is it stuff that they really care about? Did you start down one direction or one topic and you completely went to a completely different topic that they're not interested in? Like, let's say, for example, here's something I wouldn't recommend. If somebody signs up for your newsletter and you propose a free item, I wouldn't recommend in that first email just immediately having an email that says buy my product now. That's a way you can get high unsubscribes, because when you think about it, nobody likes to be tricked. We're all, when we sign up for something, or if we try something and what we actually get is completely different than what we expect, we're going to be a little upset about it. So I think more so to mitigate the amount of unsubscribes, whatever list you're sending out to, try to stay consistent with the topic that you initially promised. And if you do need to shift, you need to work on messaging to find a way to just be genuine to them, to let them know, like, hey, here's we no longer talk about this topic that much anymore. We're going to be making a shift. If you want to stick with us, I'd love to have you continue to be a subscriber. If not, here's an easy way to unsubscribe. Does that answer your question? Is John still there?
Yes, it answered my question. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, cool. All right. So this is kind of your first, testing your subject line. This is really kind of like your first line of defense. Before anybody, it doesn't matter how great your email is or how beautiful it is. If the subject line doesn't get their attention, then you're not going to go anywhere. So after this talk, I have a bunch of resources that you can use in terms of tools you can use to be able to test your subject line. I always recommend, whenever you're crafting emails, especially if you're coming up with a series of emails, sit down one by one, look at the emails that you're putting together, and write out 3 or 4 versions of the subject line for each email. Just get into the habit of doing that, because with any form of writing, usually the first thing that you come up with isn't your best, but it just kind of gets things going. So I always recommend, what we always do with our team is we'll write out 2 or 3 different subject lines and we'll test and see which ones are the best. And we'll keep, using some of these tools right here, some of the tools like CoSchedule or Touchstone or NetAtlantic, to be able to test our subject lines until we can find something that makes the most sense. So I'm a huge fan of testing. Always find a way to test. Write several versions of your subject line before you decide to put it together, unless it's a one-off email and you're just sending it to one person. You don't have to really test that too much. And then and this doesn't go for all you guys, because I think a lot of you guys are in different industries, that some of the industries are a little more on the conservative side, but I challenge some of you to experiment with testing emojis. I wish I had a perfect answer of why emojis get a higher response than a lot of other emails, but they do. And I recommend test, see if some emojis will be able to help increase open rates.
I bet that emojis are demographic specific, and that they actually cause some demographics to respond less. And so I don't think really there's a blanket statement there that's actually accurate across all the different groups that we have represented today. That would be an interesting test, right? To see if I'm right, or whether you think that emojis work across industries.
Exactly. And that's why I say, like I said, it probably wouldn't work across all the industries on the call. It wouldn't work across all the industries on the call. If you're in retail, I think it would definitely work. Co-working spaces, it'll work. Let's see some of the other ones. a lot of software companies, you could do it. Like if you're software as a service, you can do it. But if you are going to do it, take the time to test. Just see how people respond. I'm a huge fan of you should always test versus assume. So this one right here, I have 2 subject lines here, and I'm going to have some participation in terms of, I want you guys to just take a moment to think about which ones which out of these 2 emails subject lines, which one do you think would be the most successful in terms of open rates? So I'll give you like 30 seconds or so.
Are you able to see the chat questions that are popping up in the chats?
Let's see. I thought I could. I'm not able to. Okay, I think I am. Oh, now I am. All right, yeah, so I see people's answers. All right, that's good. All right, I'll give everybody a couple more seconds. So subject A was actually the winner. And it's funny that I do this a lot, and I always get a ton of people who choose subject B. And my assumption is just because it's a simpler email. But I'm going to give you guys some nuggets on why this email appeals a little bit more. Part of the difference between this one, let's just go back and compare the 2. Part of the difference between these 2 emails is email A just has a little more power in the subject line. Like there's so many power words out there. Oh, you guys hear me? Hello?
Yep, you're doing fine.
All right, cool. So subject A, one of the things it does is it puts the reader into the situation. See how you can save 15% now versus the other one it just says save 15% now. Use a very powerful word. There's a ton of words, and I'm going to share a whole list with you guys of emotional and powerful words that you could start utilizing in your copy that really helps drive people to take an action. But the C and the U are some 2 power words that are thrown in here that has an impact on getting people to feel like it's something that's really being addressed to them. The length of this doesn't really make too much of a difference because the see how you can save 15% now still is short enough where you can be able to view it in your inbox. You'll still be able to view the whole message. There's a fine balance between making your subject line too long and too short, but this still fits within the length in terms of how much words you want to put into your subject line. So the point of this exercise, I really just wanted to encourage you guys, and I'm going to share a list with you that has over 180 plus power words. Whenever you're creating your subject line, spend time just thinking about words that really bring out power. They bring out they elicit emotion. They get people, back to the emotional response goal. I already talked about this. Like I'll share this list with you, a PDF where you'll be able to leverage some of these words. So yeah, to recap, today we talked about figuring out the purpose. Any email that you draft, especially if you're coming up with a campaign or a series of emails, take a moment to really think about the purpose of the email. Make sure it's really clear before you start to write any of the other information within the email. And then number 2 is knowing your target audience. Being really clear on number 1, their thought process when they make decisions to do certain things, whether it's if they make decisions to buy a product or they make decisions to download a PDF or reply to your email. You really want to get to the point where you know your customers as much as you can. You want to, I always say this, you want to get to the point where you ideally want to be able to finish some of the sentences of your customers. Have you guys ever had that moment where one of your friends, you guys were having a conversation and you said something and they just kind of said what you were thinking? Your goal, which, it's, you should aspire to getting to that point where you can build that type of relationship with your customer, where you really know what they're really interested in, what they're not interested in, what they're concerned about, all those things. You want to get really obsessed with that part. Which leads to the next point, is the emotional response goal. By the end of me reading, or your customers reading this email, I should feel what? Should I feel excited? Should I feel curious to learn more? Should I feel a sense of concern, or should I be thinking about different options? By the end of them reading your email, how should they feel? They should feel like what? And then number 4, aligning your message with the subject line. This may seem like common sense, and it is, but some people want to try to break the rules. And I think I always caution you, if you're going to create a subject line where your body of the email is very different, I'll tell you what to expect. Don't be surprised if people hit the spam, or they delete, or they don't reply to your emails. Try to be genuine. What you advertise in your subject line, relate to it in the email. And then number 5, again, testing your subject line. Anytime you are putting together a series, if it's not a personal one-off email, like me emailing John to ask him a question or trying to reschedule, and you're trying to send something out to the masses, take 2 minutes to write down a couple different variations of your subject line and test them with some of the tools that we'll provide, like CoSchedule or Touchstone. And then, number 6 is in your copy, try to use words that are powerful, that get some kind of emotional response. This is kind of a side note, and it's something I'm starting to do, is look into poetry, because one of the things poetry is good at is being able to say the most with the least amount of words. And I'm not saying you need to try to write poems in your email. I'm not saying that at all. But what you're trying to do is look for ways to get your message across as clear and as powerful as possible with the least amount of words. Here's my team again. So like I said, I promise, I'm going to give you guys a 100+ Power Word download. I'm going to give you a 6-step worksheet of the stuff that we just went through, and then a list of some tools that you guys can use to just be able to test out your subject line when you need to, when you're crafting campaigns or crafting emails to the masses. So I want to take this time to open it up. I know you guys have a lot of questions. I'm going to try to look through some of the questions that I probably haven't answered. But yeah, let's open it up to any questions that you guys might have right now.
Can you hear me all right?
Yep, I can hear you just fine.
So one question, or one thing I struggle with, is when you're defining your target audience, how do you keep that balance between, people that have a similar interest, but not making it too narrow? You don't want to email a list of 5 people, or maybe you do. Right.
That's a really good question. The biggest thing, you want to start broad, and you just want to work your way in. Like I can share this with all you guys. We have like a framework that we use to be able to come up with just common words or common quotes or common things that our potential customers or customers say when they're making certain decisions. And we just kind of collect that, and we collect that, and we put it into like a kind of like I don't want to say a spreadsheet, but more so like a document. So when we're just reviewing that, we can look at some of the buzzwords or some of the things that they commonly say. Like what I hear a lot, people in terms of like people are becoming our customers or clients, I hear them say a lot that, right now I love doing my core work, or I love the work that we do, but I just struggle with following up with people. I'm terrible at following up with people. I try to text people, to try to set up meetings. So for me, when I hear that, I immediately, for my business, I automatically hear, all right, there's some areas where you need to automate some things. But going back to the main point, start paying attention to what people actually say to you when they're getting ready to make decisions, and start writing that stuff down. And that some of that stuff should be in your copy, because that's what people actually say when they're making those decisions. And I think you just start broad and you work your way in. There's no way to really get extremely specific in terms of like every individual one-off person. You're going to have a specific message, but you want to get a really good general idea where you start to get a better understanding of what are the people that are attracted to your company think like. What are some of the common things that they say? And I think a lot of companies, small companies, don't take the time to really think about what their customers said to them or what they're saying during that purchasing process, or why they didn't purchase, which can be even bigger idea. Like if somebody, for you, you're in a co-working space, if somebody scheduled an appointment and they did a tour with you, and for some reason they just decided not to become a member, I'd love for you to ask them what were some of the main reasons for you, because that may also be what other people are thinking. I don't have coronavirus. Everybody calm down. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
I have a question too. So focusing on the part of ROI, what's the typical ROI that you can see on an email campaign? And and then the second part of the question would be, how does that compare to alternative channels of marketing?
Yeah, so I can go ahead and answer that. I don't have I wish I would have put the chart on here. I don't have the chart on this presentation, but I'll share some of the research that I pulled together. Off the top of my head, I don't have the hard numbers, but it's really insane in sense of here. I'll create some more context for you. Think about whenever you get a new phone, what are some of the first apps that you download? Obviously, you download Instagram and stuff like that. But if you needed to download any of those, you're going to download your email. When a person's on Instagram or when they're on Facebook, when they open Instagram, they just can scroll from one ad to the next or one post to the next. When you open an email, you look at that email in that time and moment. So that allows you to be able to have a person's attention more. The other thing that you run into, and I'm not saying that, what I'm saying is you should add email to a part of your strategy, not exclude anything else. Those other channels should be used, like Instagram, and this depends on your business, because some businesses, for Instagram, it doesn't make sense, or for some businesses, LinkedIn doesn't make sense. But whatever industry you're in, you need to look at those social media platforms as part of the first legs of your customer journey, because that's where they start. They need to end in your email, where you can really have more of a direct relationship with them. That's very important. So don't, if LinkedIn is working for your business, I would encourage you to keep using LinkedIn, but you need to be thinking of the end game. Like, they start their relationship with you on LinkedIn, but you need to figure out where they need to end up. And part of that is they should end up, with an email conversation where you can directly connect with them. I think that's very important.
Okay, thank you very much.
And you had a two-part question. I want to make sure I answer what was the other part?
Yeah, the second part is how does that compare versus the alternatives, right? Like there's an opportunity cost and a monetary cost of focusing on one strategy, right? So I understand the argument of you should add this, to your set of tools, right? However, particularly small organizations, our time and resources are limited. So what we really want to focus on is not absolutely everything out there, but the ones that are going to produce the highest ROI, right?
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, okay, so email marketing is effective, but is it the most effective, right? And the question being is because, and I'm not disregarding it at all, right? Like I see the value in everything that you have explained, but you know, more and more we see like more sophisticated filters on email. We see now that people are jumping like crazy into services like Simple Human, right? That all they do is they filter the email for you. There's AI is also kicking in the landscape and so on and so forth. And when it comes to especially younger generations, the last thing they want to receive is an email. I mean, me personally, I'm middle aged, and I just receive hundreds of emails.
Look really young, man.
and if I see one more, you know, I start tickling, right? So, you know, is this, you know, what I want your expert opinion on this, because obviously you deal with this way more than us. So that's the second part of the question, and thank you for everything.
Yeah. So in terms of, and again, I'm going to get those statistics to you, but for email, for every dollar invested on average across, and this is several industries, it generates $40 of revenue for every dollar invested, over $40. So in terms of the numbers, no other social media platforms are doing that right now. Now, to go ahead and answer on the more complex part, like the AI and companies that are using filtering, from my experience, because I have a data science background, most small, medium businesses don't have a clue of how to use any of that complex AI stuff. In fact, my experience is a lot of them try to use it when they really aren't set up to be able to use it. And part of the restrictions is whether they have the data. There's a lot of reasons behind it. So for the most part, most companies won't be using, I would be surprised if it changes where most companies would be using complex AI stuff to filter through emails. Because the thing is, like what you were saying, it goes back to, you know, is this going to make me money? And when you're a small and medium-sized business, you're thinking about whatever I'm doing, is this going to make me more money? And if they don't feel like, you know, filtering emails will make them more money, they're not going to do it. I think there's even a conversation of some of them even, you know, feeling like having any type of AI tools would make them more money. A lot of people are skeptical, but my point is, email is still it's still king because it's still the most consistent. And when you look at the trends compared to all the different apps and stuff that come out, just take a look at some of the apps that's happened over years. TikTok is a new one. I don't know how that's going to impact Instagram yet, but years ago we had Snapchat, and you see how that is changing and how it's evolving. A lot of these applications are coming and going, and they're powerful if you can, you know, considering the timing, you can leverage them when they're at their peak. But the thing about email is it's still something that everybody just uses. And there are some people, I get it, that get annoyed with getting emails. But the masses is still in terms of the side of being able to use email to communicate. So I think and then the other piece is with all the applications that come out on platforms, the thing that I see that is hard to grasp is you don't own it. And when something happens, like let's give you an example. Let's say your one of your social media platforms gets hacked, and somebody puts some stuff on there that is just really disrespectful to the public and shouldn't be on there. You could lose, if you have thousands of followers, you could lose hundreds of followers just like that. Now, how do you get those back? Email, if you make that mistake, you know, and it gets hacked, at least you have a chance to be able to, you know, explain to them and say, hey, look, I am completely sorry. Here's what happened. But with social media, or in general, there's a lot of challenges in terms of like, you don't own what you, people think they own that list, but they really don't own it. And again, I think working in combination with two, I feel like social media can be a powerful first leg, but your goal should be able to get them closer to the, you know, take them down the line where the relationship is closer.
Okay.
Does that answer the second part?
It totally does, and thank you so much. If I may just finish with something, like when you share the resources with us, if you know any place where, like a marketplace for buying and selling email lists by industry, by vertical, that would be very useful, right? Because sometimes one of the difficulties of getting started is, where do I get my first email list? And I haven't been able to find a solid, high quality marketplace yet for that.
I'm glad you brought that up. I didn't even think to mention that in the talk today, but I'm glad you brought that up. That's something I think I want to mention down in future talks. So here's my thing with purchasing lists. So most of the companies that you will purchase a list from, a lot of those lists do tend to be, not all of the lists, but a lot of it tends to be outdated. It's really difficult to keep those databases up. And what you run the risk of more, and I'm not saying that it's a strategy you should exclude. I'm just telling you, what to expect. And you run the risk of being flagged for spam more. Those are the risk factors. With that being said, on the flip side is, if you purchase 1,000 leads or something like that, you can get in front of people more. And then you just have to kind of figure out, but the things that you're dealing with, you can get more volume, but the quality may be lower. I would say in terms of the offline approach, which this is not the offline approach, but the more difficult approach is, obviously if you're running ads or doing stuff on social media or networking, or you're hosting events, those are some of the best ways to be able to get leads. And I know it's more difficult. I'm right there with you, but it's more difficult, but it's more valuable because people, you have their expectations. They know what to expect. They expect that they're going to get an email from you, and that not only reduces your ability to get spammed or flagged for spam, but it gives you a more of a fighting chance to really build deeper relationships and probably convert more of those to either followers or customers. So that's the caveat. And I think for every business, depending on what business you're in, especially if you're in software, like I always say, you should test and see if you can find a good balance that will work the best for you. So, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
I had a quick question. What is your views on offering incentives for emails? Give you an example. I was at a conference a year ago, and he offered a raffle for a pair of sneakers for just signing up for an email, just giving us your email. What are your views on that? And then what other tactics could you possibly give along those lines?
Yeah, I like that. Shoot, where's that raffle? I want some shoes. I think so. When you're capturing people's emails, if you think about it, it's everything's all about offering value. Every form of a relationship, every type of relationship is about offering value. So I think it's great. That's a fundamental piece. I think offering value in exchange for somebody's email is basically saying, if you give me your email, not only am I going to help you with this, but I'm going to continue to help you with this. So I think it's great. I think the bigger challenge is, how do you figure out what's valuable to the people you're targeting to get them to do that? And this goes back in that, even though we use this 6-step framework for the email piece, there's a lot of it that can be used for other situations as well. I think this goes back to sitting down, and if you have any chance where you can sit down with customers or potential customers and start to learn what they're really interested in, what are they concerned about, what are they worried about, and what would make them happy in terms of like benefits. Like for example, if I had we'll just use this talk for example. People are frustrated with email and how to use it. I want to simplify the process for it, where you can pull up a sheet and you can look at, all right, here's how I should think. Step 1, step 2, step 3. And this will help me come up with really good, powerful emails. You need to think in terms of with your people, what do they really care about and what would actually help them get whatever kind of results or fulfill their needs push them forward. And if you can, and this only comes with either conversations or surveys, really having real interactions with people. You start writing that stuff down, what people actually say to you, and you keep hearing redundancies, that needs to be in your copy, because that's what people are thinking in terms of, you ever have a moment, in terms of like, if you're starting a business and you're up late at night and you're frustrated about something, it's like, man, I really wish I could figure out a way to get beyond this situation, or I'm really worried about this situation. Those are the thoughts that are actually going through my head. And you need to get to the point where you really understand what are some of the thoughts that people have when they're making those decisions or when they're on the edge. And then what things can you do to get them the results they need? Constantly having your conversations with potential customers within that circle will really help you. That stuff needs to be in your copy. And that's why somebody would give you their email, because they feel like you're going to help them, and you are going to help them.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I just wanted to, thank you very much. Yep.
Any other part of that question that I didn't answer? Just want to make sure.
No, I think it covered it. I was just, seeing, like I said, we did a raffle. We raffled off a pair of sneakers. And I was trying to think of some other strategies along those lines, because we found that very effective.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I just wanted to see if there's any other strategies that you can think of along those lines, where providing value to someone to get an email from them.
Well, what are your customers really like? What are some other things that they really like?
Well, I mean, right now, so they essentially, what we do is remove the barriers for understanding sports analytics, and people who like sports also like sneakers. They like quick tidbits about their favorite teams and players. So I've been experimenting with dropping quick one-liners about like a stats of the day or something like that to our email list. And but I don't think it's been as effective as the raffle. We're actually providing value to them. So I was just trying to think of.
Okay. Well, yeah, we definitely we'll talk more offline if you need to, but if what you're doing is working, try to double down on whatever's working, and then you can leave some room for testing other things. But if that's working, you need to
Thank you very much.
So make sure that you're measuring the right thing. If you're in your sales funnel and giving away sneakers increases the total number of people that sign up to your mailing list who are not customers, then you're just chasing vanity metrics. What you really want is customers to sign up, people who want your product, who really want to engage. And so you might offer things that act as a filter instead of a incentive to join, but a filter that causes people who are unlikely to join to not come in, and the ones that are likely to join to come in. So be careful about calling it successful that I have 100,000 people on my mailing list. If your conversion rate is still 0.001% on that mailing list, it's not a marketing mailing list.
Yeah. Good point. Thanks, John.
Good point. Thanks for adding that.
So there's a bunch more questions in the chat. Do you want to pick through any of those?
Yeah. Let's see. What is a good percentage of unsubscribe? I answered that one. But doesn't this being labeled as spam? Okay, so did I answer this one? Do you have some good examples of subject lines that increases the open rate but doesn't risk being labeled as spam? I think yeah, that's a good question. I don't think I've touched on that one already. So if you guys didn't hear me, the question I'm about to shed some light on is, do you have some good examples of a subject line that increases the open rate but doesn't risk being labeled as spam? I think there's a few factors in here, and I think it goes back to the consistency of your subject line matching with what you're actually going to talk about in the body is one factor. So I don't think it doesn't matter too much exactly what you're saying, as long as you're not being offensive and you're not being, you're being respectful and what you say in your subject line matches with what you're going to talk about in your body, I think you should be fine. That's one piece. The other piece is, you know, finding out the frequency of how often you should be emailing your contact list. If you're emailing people twice a day or once every day, first, you know, that may be too much depending on the industry you're in. And I think that involves some experimentation. And the way you could do that is you could start with maybe sending out an email once a week, or, you know, a couple a month, and then you can slowly increase it and just see how people respond. If your open rates decrease, or if people aren't taking action like you want them, you keep testing it. But I think in terms of a subject line that increases open rates, it also goes back to, again, thinking about, can you really get on the level of understanding what they're really interested in? If you're sending stuff that people are really interested in, and you'll learn that from the conversations, then they're more willing to really open those emails. Spam doesn't happen too often, unless you're just kind of doing you're sending out emails that are just way off in terms of, like, maybe the subject line says one thing, the body says another, or it's something that is totally irrelevant from what they're interested in.
So I think one of the things that people fail to understand is that in any of these communications, they need to have the act of reading by the customer create value. And so if you say, learn how to save 15%, that's really not creating value, right? The value is typically not in price. The value is in understanding or awareness or engagement or humor or something. But the act of reading the subject line, the act of reading the email should create value for that customer base that you care about. Maybe it also acts as a filter in terms of creating, you know, those people that don't like this kind of thing to get off your mailing list, so that, again, you're not sending unwanted emails to people who don't really care about what you care about in your process. But without that understanding of where the core value is that you're creating by the reading, not by the action of the person, but just the fact they read it, changes the words you choose, changes the story that you tell.
Yep. No, I couldn't have said it better. Yeah. At the end of the day is, you know, by the end, and think of this in your head, by the end of this email, I want them to feel, think, or do, you know, what, and whatever, and you can fill in the blank. Okay, I see another one. It says, can you talk a bit about the difference between newsletters as a channel and drip email campaigns as a channel? So when you think, the definition of newsletter, I'll define it loosely. When you think about a newsletter, it's really sending out a periodic kind of email or information to your audience that shares updates, or maybe shares strategies or secrets. Drip campaign, all a drip campaign, all that means is, you know, maybe somebody signed up for something and they're going to get a series of emails. So let's say I signed up. I'm trying to think of a different example. So let's say I signed up for your secret strategies for the best health. So the drip campaign probably initially may be one email coming out, then 3 days later I get another email, then maybe 4 days later I get another email. That's really all a drip campaign is. It's just a series of emails over a given period of time. That is very basic. Your newsletter is what you're using to try to inform, maybe / upsell people, or, you know, tell them more about your product and just build that relationship more. You could use a lot of that hand in hand. If you already have your entire, in most cases you don't, but let's say you have your what you want to email people for the newsletter for the next 6 months. That could be a drip campaign. That could be, for the next 6 months, I already have written out all the emails I want to send out to people, and anybody who signs up for it is going to get these emails, you know, over a period of time. So to answer your question, I wouldn't get too hung up on, you know, the newsletter as a channel versus, I would look at email more so of being a channel. Email is a channel.
So I want to press on that a little bit, because most people think about newsletters as a broadcast activity. I write it once, I send it to many people.
Mhm.
A drip campaign is not a broadcast, it's a one-to-one, right? My bot mailing this person at this time, where the time is different. And so it inherently opens up the possibility of personalization, both in terms of time, but it's also in terms of content. And so if I'm doing drip email campaigns correctly, I'm learning about that person, I'm walking them through specific stages, and there's decisions that are being made by the person reading it that affect what the next email will be. And so it's not just a newsletter that is timed out over time, it's something that's personally responsive, which is really a fundamentally different way of talking about customer engagement and customer relationship.
I would even go a step further. I think when you think in terms of these two, the email, the drip campaign, I always tell every client that we work with is, if you know your business and you have an idea of how customers flow in, you should always start with a customer map. You should always start with trying to map out your customer journey. And I'm just give you a quick idea of that. So let's say, I signed up for maybe a free trial. Okay, what happens next after I sign up for the free trial? And I'm gonna play on John's scenario. Maybe I get that first email that has some information what's involved in that free trial. If I open that email, then that may send me down a different path of series of emails versus if I didn't. If I didn't open that email, then I may just get a completely different set of emails that are designed for people that just for some reason didn't open the first email. And that can really break off into a lot of different branches. I think to answer this, the biggest thing is you want to map out the ideal customer journeys, how customers start their relationship with your business and what you think currently happens next. And that will help you dictate what an email drip campaign will look like for any new contact that comes into your business.
Yeah, so that suggests that you should put together a talk about mapping your customer journey for drip campaigns. I think that would be well received.
Yeah.
But given that we're out of time, so hopefully this is working. Could you unshare your screen, please?
Yep. Let me get out of here. Give me just a second.
So I'd like to get a sense from everyone, just, vote this way or vote this way. Are you happy with this format or are you unhappy with this format? Yeah, all right. Everybody's happy with doing this. So we have 3 more of these that are currently scheduled. So next week we will do another at noon on Tuesday. Feel free to sign up for those. I think that the process of engaging in this marketing would be good. Alex, are you available for questions from people offline?
Yeah, I am. I have the next 30 minutes blocked off.
All right, cool. I need to close this chat, and so perhaps you can tell them where they can chat with you.
All right, let's see. I think the easiest way for me is, and it's funny, it's ironic, you guys can email me and we can, and I'll give my number as well. Should I just type it in here?
Yeah, put it into the chat.
And also it's, I guess I'm not sharing that screen anymore. Let's see, Alex B. So here's my email. For anybody that have questions, just shoot me an email. I'd be happy to respond and we can get on a call. If you guys was looking at the slide when I had it open, my phone number and stuff is there as well. But yeah, I'd love to talk to anybody who has any further questions.